Tony, that was great, man. I appreciate you sharing your experiences and all those tips. I was trying to write them all down myself. I don't think I captured all of them, but you kind of left us at the end there hanging a little bit with the, what was it? Choices, energy, and kindness. And we're getting some questions queued up right now, but can you give us a little bit more detail around that, what you're thinking around that? And I've got a couple other follow-up questions myself.
Sure. Well, choices. I mean, everything that we do, we have to make that choice, whether we do it or whether we don't. And that's what defines us. And your first choice, if you're listening to this thing, is, am I going to take the next Gen T curriculum? Am I going to do that? Is that one of the choices? Well, that's your choice. You can do whatever you want. You can go into debt like Terry was talking about at the beginning. Do you want that X millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, or do you want to do this? But that defines you, your choices and what you do, whether it's yourself when you look at yourself 20 to 30 years from now, or what people see you as. In energy, I kind of said that. I told my kids, and I tell everybody that works for me, even if you're taking out the trash, do it better than everybody else and do it with energy. Because when you do those little things with urgency, people see that, and it makes a huge difference in how people view you, because they know you're going to go after it without saying no. And then the third one, which we need more of, is kindness. Say thank you to those who work with you, for you, and that help you. And I always tell everyone is don't just say thanks, because thanks is a lazy man's thank you. 2 words and saying thank you makes such a huge difference, because we know in today's world how we are and what is going on, that a thank you is the simplest means of praise that you can give anyone, and your employees and those working with you will give you so much more in return if you continue to thank them.
Yeah, very cool. The choices, I'll just add one thing, is a book I listened to was called The Dip, and it was really about choices. And he says, one of the things you got to do is got to figure, what are you not going to do? If you're setting priorities to get things done, what are you going to give up to make sure that you hit your goals? And I think it's all part of the choices piece of it.
Yep.
I have another question for you. You talked about, you can't do this. Nobody really does this alone. I mean, it's your drive and your desires, but there's always people that help you along the way, give you a break, collaborate with you, those kind of things. And so I've always said it's never too early or too late to start building your network. Any tips for folks that are kind of on the early part of their journey on how to build that network, and any thoughts around that?
Well, let's talk about the individual that's going to next Gen T. You're going to meet the instructors. You may meet Terry or Jacob or one of you. Latch yourself onto one of those folks that you see as kind of an idol or someone that you would want to be. Talk to them, ask them for help. I mean, I've got a myriad of folks that I talk to every month to help them out, but you got to start just by those folks you interface with every day. More than likely, there's going to be 1 or 2 men or women that are already doing the things that's helping make a difference in your life. Ask them, say, will you be my mentor? Because you got to start there, because whether you're talking about yourself or me, I recommend people all the time to help others that they may or may not know. Just attach yourself to those closest to you right now, and that network will grow, especially if you say thank you.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that is always so important. And I think it's surprising if you have the courage, like you mentioned, to reach out to somebody, that you'd be surprised how many times that they will be helpful. That if you're genuine and you're gracious, that they're more than happy to help. I think that's probably the rule, not the exception. So that's really cool. So folks, here's actually a question coming in from Jason. So I'm going to hold my question, and maybe if we can't put that up on the screen, I'm just going to read it so everybody can see it. And it said that leaders are readers. What do you read to further your leadership studies and stay immersed, keep in the mindset? So maybe some book recommendations that you'd make for the audience.
There's a book right now called Influence by Robert Cialdini that I'm reading right now. But, the thing with today's world, I mean, there's a bunch of books that we read, right? That I just continue to read through. But in today's world, and I call the millennial era, right? People want short little articles. And I would challenge you. I would say, whether you're on LinkedIn or you're on Federal Business News or you're on Inc., uh, I would dedicate X amount of time every day to read through those things. I know it's hard sometimes to pick up a book and continue to read it unless you're a person that's read a lot in your life. And I'm guilty of that. I love to read short articles and magazines and those kind of things. I mean, you capture a lot from that, but there are specific books that I do pick up. But I would say read as much as you can, whether it's a paragraph or you're reading an entire book about, and stay current on those different things because it changes so quickly.
Yeah, fair enough. So I've got a question for you around, because I've been asked this question in our NGT community that we have, and it's around certifications versus education. But my question is more specific around, you're out there now kind of in the private sector and public sector as well, but you're seeing folks that are trying to solve real business challenges today. And could you give folks maybe a little insight into the kinds of skills, the kind of certs that you see companies asking for? Because there's a lot of options out there. So is there anything that you would say yes, or one say, that one may not be as valuable? Any tips?
Kurt, I grin at you because that's the one thing that when Terry and Jacob, Jacob reached out to me initially because we worked together. But when they told me what they were doing about, and there are a lot of certs out there. And if you're at my level, you got CSSP, you got all these things, or CISSP, et cetera,
yeah.
right? I've never been a good test taker, right? So I haven't been one of those guys that excel in those kinds of areas. But what I'll tell you, just like what I mentioned, is if you go after it and you're an expert, you don't necessarily need those certifications. Now, what you're going to say is, well, Tony, that's bogus because you got to have these certs just to get hired. But that's where NGT comes in. They will help you get those certs that they have and those others that you need to supplement, and they'll interface you directly with those companies already to get you those jobs. Because I am not, generally speaking, a firm believer that a certification is going to make you a better employee. Now, it makes you help you understand more of that ecosystem, but just because you have a cert doesn't mean you can go defend the network. Just because you have your CISSP, you're a know-all of how to build that secure network. Yeah, it gives you a fundamental base, but it's more than just that. Like NGT, they give you that practical experience that if somebody comes to me with a NGT certification or training or whatever you want to call it, and I have the other person, I'm more likely going to take that person with the practical experience, because it gets back to my experience when I was in the Middle East. These guys had all these certs on how to defend the network or
right.
build a router or switch, but they didn't know how to build the enterprise and the ecosystem. Yeah. And so understand more than just what that piece of paper says. Can you do it practically?
Yeah, fair enough. That's great. That's great advice, I think, for all of us. So back to the building your network piece, because I just think that's so important for folks. And like I said, it's never too early or too late to do that. Any tips you would give folks for beyond just some of the reaching out, other ways, other things besides kind of the obvious things that are out there like LinkedIn and some.
And I would say LinkedIn is one of the most important ones. And if any of you that are listening in that are in the military, you get 12 months of LinkedIn Premium for free. You just got to sign up for it. So that gives you more visibility and that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, there's mixed thoughts about LinkedIn, because it's funny that you asked that question, Kurt, because I had a friend of mine ask that question this morning. How can I get myself more known? And I said, LinkedIn is from an IT, and you got the Air Force Electronics and Communications Association, you got these different associations, but if you want to bring everybody together, LinkedIn. And I know there's mixed feelings about LinkedIn about, well, I'm not going to accept someone unless I know them. But here's what I would tell you. I'm up to over 5,000 people on LinkedIn. That's not a bragging point, but my point of the fact is I'm getting offers and opportunities every day because of that. Build that. You don't have to just accept everyone, but as long as you're not putting out there things that are personal or about your business, keep it generic speaking. The more people the better chance you have of landing an opportunity. And I would say that's the biggie. And other social medias as well. Other means, get your name out there. I mean, Terry and Jacob do that with NGT quite often, and that's helping them exponentially. But you can build a huge network just by using LinkedIn, especially in our IT, cyber. I mean, it's more than just that in LinkedIn, but from our perspective, especially you can get all functional communities that deal in the IT arena that may not see you otherwise, like whether you're medical or whether you're, logistics or whatever else. That's kind of it brings us all together in some capacity.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, you know what, the advice I give to folks is, never just send a blind invitation on LinkedIn. Just send a couple sentences, nothing pitchy, but tell the person why you want to connect, and they'll be much more likely to connect with you. And you actually, it's about creating relationships, not just getting connection numbers, right? It isn't a numbers game. It's about the quality of the connections that you make. That's really what's important. So it looks like we have another question here, and I'll read it off because it's a little bit long. It says, has COVID had an impact on how you've approached leadership? In other words, being able to provide consultants, guidance, et cetera. Are there different dynamics when leading in person versus digitally, and the things you can and can't do?
Jason, it's funny that you asked that question, because I've always been the person that I lead an analog leadership. I like to go out and talk to people. I like to shake their hand. I like to do those kind of things. And the proverbial digital leadership is, sitting behind your desk. And obviously COVID has forced us to do that. Now, with my company, I'm a company of one right now, and the consulting business, and it's forced us to change the way we do things. And it's not easy now, especially for those companies that have a lot of people. Yeah, you can do the interface, because Kurt and I were talking about this earlier, is, it's hard to do these kind of forums because there's no crowd feedback. You guys all may be sleeping out there listening to me. I don't know. And I can't see that. But it's the same thing from leadership, is now you have to take a different approach, and maybe you need to call your people more often because you can't go see them, shake their hands, pat them on the back, but you can do it a different way. And they understand that, but it's still the fundamental meaning of just interfacing and touching base with them. And again, I have to say it over and over again, is to say thank you. Say it over and over again, even if it's the littlest things, because it'll make a huge difference and they'll go out of their way. And also it's harder now with this COVID because you're sitting behind a computer 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day. And, it's that Zoom, go-to meeting, Teams, or whatever it is, and trying to understand that and being able to get that read, especially when you're talking with a client, or like I said, talking about de-geeking it. Can you explain it to them, and are they really understanding what you're saying? Because, one person will be up and the next person will talk, and it'll keep flipping, and you can't really see the feedback. So yes, it's hard, and it's just things that we're going to have to live with now for a long time, I think.
Yeah. Well, Tony, I know we're just about at time, and I've got several takeaways. I won't be surprised if folks ask if they could get your list of attributes and traits and stuff like that. That would be great. I think the de-geek it could be the next T-shirt, just so you know.
Especially with next NGT.
I'm looking forward to that. We'll have it on the back. Have it on the back of this one here. So that's about all the time we have, Tony. I really appreciate you sharing your experience and knowledge. It's invaluable, and we thank you a lot for joining today.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, Next Gen T. I appreciate what you guys keep making a difference. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Jacob Hess here. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you really enjoyed it. And I'd also like to remind you, if you're truly serious about your career in information technology, then be sure to check out our IT engineer training programs at www.zerotoengineer.com.